Hello and welcome to another video. And first of all, I don't normally do something like this, but the world's a pretty rubbish place at the moment, and you know, it's just so much has been going on in the last few weeks, and I think it's important that we look after ourselves a bit. And I just want to make sure you're okay. I read your comments daily, and yeah, just that thing about, you know, we've got a good community on here, and it's nice to see people replying to other people's comments as well. And this isn't a support channel or nothing like that. Just that sometimes you just need to make sure other people around you are okay in that conversation. So yeah, I just want to add that at the beginning. You know, I'm a mental health tutor as my proper job, and I don't think we talk openly enough about some things. So anyway, bit of an unusual start, but we'll get back into the video. So again, thank you for all your support, all your comments, and the buy me coffees and membership and all that. Your support has just been brilliant, and I just can't thank you enough for that. That said, we're doing a time slip video today, and there has been some comments about the time slip videos in the comments section. Not all of them are nice, but we are going to be mixing up time slip and scary and weird videos on this channel. It's what it's about. And this one is a time slip video. So we've got about 2 or 3 stories from this hotel. And I say 2 or 3 because it depends on how long it takes me to get through them. And I don't want to make the video extra long. But without any further ado, we'll get into it. So we're looking at the Tunbridge Wells Hotel. Now, it used to be called the Swan Hotel. And that's what most people knew it of until really quite recent, to be truthful. But this is in Tunbridge Wells, as the name would suggest, which is in Kent. Now, when I say this is a weird story, it does follow the lines of your normal time slip stories, so nothing unusual there. But there is a second part to this story that is a little bit strange. So what we have, before the Swan Hotel was where it is now, there was a building on that site already, and that was called High House. That was in 1719, when all these redevelopments happened in 1835. Instead of knocking down High House, they incorporated it into the new Swan Hotel, which made like a double-fronted building. So from one side of the road, you go in and it's the small High House section, and from the other side of the building, you go in via the Swan Hotel entrance. But it is a pretty stunning building. It does look old, but it does look impressive. But what we have in 1980 to 1985, we can't pin that date down precisely, we have 2 British actors that are filming in the area, and they book rooms at the Swan Hotel. On arrival, they enter it and they see this very nicely kept hotel, and they're told to take their bags up to their room. They take their bags up to the room. They asked what time dinner is. They said, you know, come down at 8 o'clock and we can sort of have some food. So they're quite happy with it. They're sitting up in their room. And I should state, we don't know who these actors are. People out there know who these actors are. I don't. Some of you that may have heard this story before may know and can comment below. If I'm guessing, I believe they may have had something to do with the Carry On films. That's what I'm putting in now. But these 2 actors, they unpack all their luggage and set the room out, and they think they're going to go down and just have a look around the town and then come back and have dinner. They go downstairs, and before they leave the front door of the hotel, they're looking around and they're taking notice of the architecture and all the different old photographs that are up on the wall. And they go through a door and they walk into what we'd call a smoking room. There was like these red leather chairs there, and there's a big table, lots of books on a shelf, and there's like, actually this is quite impressive. One of them wanders over and is just looking around at all the books, but the other actor isn't that impressed, and he sort of like backs out the room and decides that he's just going to go way outside, and he actually ends up wandering off down the street just looking at some of the other buildings. But the actor that is left in the smoking room is taking his time looking at all the names of the books on the side of the shelf, when a door opens up at the back of the room, and this well-dressed gentleman walks in, what he describes as like a butler, and the butler turns around and says, "Oh, I wasn't expecting anybody. Take a seat." The actor sits down on this leather chair. Although the room was really warm, the chair was icy cold and it was actually a bit uncomfortable to sit in. He's sort of moving around and the butler comes up and he puts a blanket over the gentleman's legs. And he's thinking, it's a little bit strange. And then the butler comes back with a glass of brandy and he's like, well, it's a bit fancy. And then within seconds, the butler turns up with a box of cigars. And he offers these cigars to the actor and says, what one would you like? And the actor's like, well, why not? And he points to one. The butler takes it out and preps a cigar for him and all this sort of stuff. The actor said he smoked about half of this cigar. But not all of that time was the butler in the room. The butler left the room and they'll come back in and check on him and see if there's anything else he needed. After about another 20 minutes, the actor is actually feeling a little bit sick. He's not sure if it's from the cigar or from the brandy. He makes excuses to the butler and he leaves the room. Now he wanders out into the street of Tunbridge Wells and he thinks he'd better find his friend. He's walking up and down, he can't find him, but he knows they've got dinner booked at 8 o'clock at the hotel. 8 o'clock comes and the other actor turns up and they sit down at the table to have their food. And they're talking and he's going, after you left and I went into that room, it was a smoking room and the butler come out and he was like, well actually, he goes, that's actually really nice, isn't it? Because actually like the old London gent sort of treatment you're getting. And they sort of joked about it and then they retired to their room. The next day they get back up and the gentleman is thinking, well, you know what, that was quite nice yesterday and it didn't cost me nothing, so I'm going to wander back down into the smoking room. He goes down the stairs and he opens up the door, which was the smoking room before, and you know what's coming. He walks in there and all that is in there is tables set out. It's quite a bleak looking room. There's nothing really fancy about it. It's almost like as if it was like a corporate room where people would give talks or a business meeting room. And he's like, well, I've gone into the wrong room. He comes back out and he's looking around and he's really getting quite puzzled. He goes up to the reception desk and says, excuse me, but where's your smoking room? The receptionist just gives him a blank look and she goes, what smoking room? He goes to the smoking room with the butler and the receptionist is like, sorry sir, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have a smoking room with a butler. He goes, you do, one with the leather chairs and the books. And the receptionist is just giving this blank stare. And the actor goes, oh, never mind. And he walks off and he carries on looking around the building to try and find this room. No matter how much he looked, he could not find that room again. They were only put there for a few days. But each day he did look around for this smoking room. He wouldn't take it that this place didn't exist. He retells the story to colleagues at the TV studio where he's working. And one of them asked somebody to look into it. They come back to him a few days later and say that that hotel where you stayed did once have a smoking room. It hasn't been there for nearly 50 years. Now, the Tunbridge Wells Hotel beforehand was called the Swan. And the Swan Hotel, in its history, was once used as like a courthouse where they would give like inquests for murders and all this sort of stuff that happened. This was quite a regular thing in that building in its previous history. Going to around about the 1960s, we have another weird event that happens in that building that I guess is quite a lot darker. We have Mrs. Nancy Fuller and her daughter Naomi. Now they arrive at the hotel and like most people they walk into the hotel and they're quite taken back by how nice it all looks in there. And they're just walking around and taking notice of getting like all the old photographs and the old paintings that are in the foyer of the entrance. And they get their key and they go up to room 16. On the way to room 16, Naomi goes a little bit funny and she's looking at this stairway saying that she recognises these stairways and there's no way she's ever been to this hotel before. And her mum's going, are you sure? She's going, yeah, definitely know these stairways. They make it into the room and Naomi's condition gets even worse. She lays down on the bed and starts going to sort of like a mini seizure. But at the same time, she's talking out loud to her mum. Now this is where things get really weird and my skeptic brain not logs out, but it It's the story, okay? So it's what has been written down, and this is how the both of them report it. Naomi is laying on the bed. She starts to age in front of her mum's eyes, and the clothes that she's wearing sort of like change and sort of transform into 19th century clothing. Naomi starts speaking in a slightly different accent and tells the mum that she's been waiting for her lover, John, to come along, but John has betrayed her and he is not coming. She is so distressed that she ends her life by jumping out of the window of that hotel. Now, as Naomi is relaying this to the mum laying on the bed, she starts having massive fits and seizures. After about 5 minutes, Naomi calms down and transforms back into Naomi as her mum knew her. Now, what we don't have is any reports of them leaving. We assume they came on staying at that hotel. Now, personally, I would not stay in that room. Naomi, once she comes through, turned around and said that she was experiencing past events from her other life. So Naomi totally believes that she had been there before in this past life as this girl who took her life out the window. And that is why she recognised the stairs, because it wasn't from this lifetime but a previous lifetime. Is this a time slip? No. Is this a time slip? Probably not, but it is a time shift. But the next one in that hotel is again from room 16. Now, what I will say is that since all these reports come out, room 16 has got itself a bit of a reputation of bedding moving around, things flying off the shelves on their own, people getting disturbed sleep, people seeing people stand at the end of the bed, all your typical ghost stuff, and furniture flying across the room. So you're very much your typical ghost stories. So 1975, we have a gentleman that's come to stay at the Swan Hotel. I keep calling it the Swan Hotel, but you'll know it as the Tunbridge Wells Hotel today, but it was the Swan Hotel when this stuff happened. He gets room 16. Now, not much happens in the first few hours of being in room 16, and he's about to settle in for the evening, but decides that he wants to go for a walk along the high street just to get a bit of exercise to help him sleep and then go back to the hotel. He does struggle getting asleep in hotels. He's a travelling salesman, so he does spend a lot of time going all over the place, and this is like his general routine. So he goes for this long walk, comes back and heads up to room 16. Now, for most people who don't stay in old hotels, you're probably so used to the old key card now that you put on the door and go in and put it in for your electric lights and all that sort of stuff. But actually, when we went to Cardigan, the room there was still big old iron key to get into the door. So not all places have gone to the keyless stuff. But this gentleman went up to his door, room 16, with a big key, turned the key and opened up the door. Now, the first thing he noticed was as he opened up that door, the door felt heavier than what he remembered. He walks into room 16. He's hit by the smell of pipe tobacco. And then standing by the window of the hotel is this very slender, very well-dressed gentleman smoking a pipe. It's not Sherlock Holmes before, forget that. But is this well-dressed gentleman smoking a pipe. And the guy's like, excuse me, this is my room. As he says that and he looks round at the room, he realises that this isn't his room. All his stuff is not in that room. And he puts his head back out, looks at the door number, it says 16, and he comes back into that room, and again, it is not his room. But what he does describe is that the room looks really outdated, as if it doesn't fit into the rest of the hotel. But he describes the furniture as being really sort of like outdated, but not tatty, just doesn't fit into the current decoration of that hotel. He tells the gentleman that he's definitely got the right key, and this is definitely his room. And the gentleman goes, sorry sir, there's nothing I can say. The guy turns round walks back down to the reception and goes, "Excuse me, there's a gentleman in my room that shouldn't be there. But also, where is my stuff that was in that room?" And the receptionist's like, "Sorry, sir, what do you mean?" And as they're walking up the stairs, the person behind the reception gives a little snigger, which leads the gentleman to believe that maybe this isn't the first time this has happened. The receptionist gets up to the door, opens up the door for the gentleman, and the room is back to completely normal. Now, do the people who work in this hotel, do they know something about room 16 that is sort of kept as a guarded secret? Is it like this mysterious time-changing room that just changes around all the time? But what is it with this hotel? Now, some people say that it does lay on ley lines, which are these energy lines that go across the country. Other people say that it's to do with the water courses around the area merge underneath that part of the hotel, and it has a natural energy that runs through that building. Now, what we know that Tunbridge Wells has got loads of ghost stories, and the hotel has got lots of ghost stories as well. Now, there are often reports of people walking up down the stairway. I guess one of the main creepy ones is from 1970, when a couple are staying there getting ready for a wedding. So in 1970, we have a husband and wife that are staying at the hotel for a wedding on the Saturday. They arrived there on a Friday night, and they're only staying at the hotel for 2 nights. On a Friday night, they get there, and like most people have done in this story, have gone out and walked around the town before coming back to go to bed. Now, I'm guessing this is because Tunbridge Wells is like a really pretty location and got some old buildings and theatres that people like to go around and look at in the evening. I should have driven there, but have you seen the weather warnings coming up? I was maybe putting this video out next week, and I wanted to go there this weekend, but the weather's just been terrible. They come back from their walk, they go and sit in the function room. Now, I'm assuming this isn't the same room that was the old smoking room. I'm assuming this is a slightly different room. There are many different rooms in this hotel that are set out like this for conventions and just for guests to sit around with a bar there. They're sitting down having a drink, and after about 40 minutes they think, okay, well, that's enough and we'll go up to bed. As they're walking up the stairway to their room, they see this lady standing at the top of the stairs who starts to walk towards them. Now, they describe her as very well dressed, a very pretty face, and at first they didn't really think anything unusual about her until that lady got really close. Now, with etiquette, you would wait for one person to come up the stairs before you go down them, or vice versa. Unfortunately, on this occasion, they'd already started walking halfway up the stairs when this lady started to walk down them. The wife turns around and says to the lady, "Oh, I love your dress." And apparently this lady has a really nice purple dress on, like a purple ball gown sort of dress. The lady ignores them, but gets closer to them. As they pass each other on the stairway, the couple feel a really icy wind go through their body. And the husband turns round to look at the lady who's just passed them, and she's disappeared. Now, she couldn't have just vanished off those stairs if she was a real person. So straight away, both of them believe they've seen a ghost. The thing about this hotel is that Timeslip and weird stories are not short on the ground. So we have things like people having conversation with butlers outside the building. When they spoke to the reception about how nice their staff are outside, they go, "We've got no staff outside." And they say these are repeated stories from around about the 1950s right away up till, well, modern times. Now, of course, I'm aware of the modern paranormal team that hired out room 16, said that they were traumatised all night by ghosts keep visiting that room. But yet, when challenged, all they produced was some very poor audio and no video footage of it at all, and no photographs. And despite them reporting seeing full apparitions and things flying across the room and all this sort of stuff, and one of them being attacked, there was actually no footage or photographs of that. I say there was some dodgy audio that could easily be faked anyway. Not that I want to poo-poo all paranormal teams, being coming from a paranormal team. I like honesty in the reports. This report that they put together just didn't seem to be credible, if you know what I mean. It was too good to be true. Let's say that. It was too good to be true. But there is one other story of room 16 that I'm going to tell you. This comes from a panicked lady at the reception of the hotel. At 1 o'clock in the morning, a lady turns up at the reception saying that somebody is tapping on her window. And they're asking for somebody called John. Now this lady is staying in room 16. And she says that she can hear this young lady's voice calling for John from her window. And she's looking out, can't see nobody, but every now and again hears that name John being whispered through the window. She's traumatised, she doesn't know what is going on. Apparently the staff go out, look around the building and assure her there is nobody outside that building and nobody can get up to the room 16 window. Now I've not been to this building, I don't know what room 16 is and if you can get to it from any other means, but I'm assuming they can't. But what we know is that when Naomi was possessed, she said her lover's name was John. Naomi's story has some facts to it. Apparently he's documented 1815 a young lady did take her own life out of the window of that building. Now back then they probably wasn't all cut up into separate rooms, and it wasn't this was the high house that was there, so it could just been a normal bedroom for somebody, but she took her life out of that window. Then after the conversions of 1835 and all those were put together to make up the big hotel, it was probably set up as room 16 where people are now staying and experiencing these weird events. So if you live anywhere near Tunbridge Wells, let me know your thoughts on this, and if you've been there, if you stayed at that hotel, would love to have some feedback from you about your views on it. And it is a place that I will go to because I've got so many ghost stories about Tunbridge Wells. There's got to be its own little book about the ghosts of Tunbridge Wells, because it does seem to be a hotbed of paranormal activity. But yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. If you do like it, give me the thumbs up, hit that hype button if you see it. Thank you for everyone who hyped my last videos, and my new subscribers, my new members, and you'll see this one on Tuesday and there'll be another one on Friday. See you soon. Bye.